Hello, my name is Gabby and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, then welcome to my channel, and today's video is going to be some book recommendations for Women's History Month. These are books that all spotlight either women, women's issues, history, or a combination of what I just said. The content warnings for all of the books I talk about today will be linked down below in the description, along with some resources that we will talk about more as the video goes on, but they will be down there. So with that, we are going to go in alphabetical order, and let's just get into it. So we are going to start this video off with Dreadnought by April Daniels and also Sovereign by April Daniels, which is the sequel to Dreadnought. Dreadnought follows our main character Danny, who is trying to keep everyone from finding out that she is transgender, but that all changes when the superhero Dreadnought is murdered right in front of her eyes, and when he transfers his powers to her, Danny suddenly finds herself in the body that she's always wanted. However, alongside all of the confusions of coming out, Dreadnought's murderer Utopia is still on the loose, and it's up to Danny to stop her. This is definitely one of my favorite superhero stories that I have ever read. It does read like the novel version of a comic book, which I really love. I also thought that both of these books had very well written and also violent action scenes, and also really interesting commentary on powers and careers when it comes to being superheroes in this world. You also get to meet a lot of really cool and fun characters, and also some transphobic and terrible characters, so again, content warnings are in the description. And our main character Danny, she is one, super badass, and two, she has a ton of personality. She's very easy to root for and to cheer on, and once again, just really, really fun. I think I gave both of these books 4 stars, or at least something close to it. And this will have another book in the series, and I am very much looking forward to whenever that third book comes out. And before we move on to the next book, I do just want to say that in the description of this video, there will be a link to the Transformation Project website. There's been a lot of really hateful and scary anti-trans legislation getting proposed and even getting passed in some states. And this website has compiled it all in the one place and keeps track of both the anti-trans legislation and legislators, and also the positive bills as well. There are scorecards for legislators that show you who in your state has sponsored or voted for an anti-trans bill and who hasn't. And this is a website that just contains a lot of important information just all around, especially when it comes to keeping up to date on these things, so I definitely recommend checking out this website if you haven't already. Next up is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Malinda Lo. This takes place in the 1950s in San Francisco's Chinatown. It follows our main character, who realizes that she's in love with another girl, as they walk under the neon sign of a lesbian bar known as the Telegraph Club. However, due to the time period and the setting, these two girls are not in a safe place to fall in love with one another, especially with deportation hovering over our main character's father despite his hard-won citizenship, since Red Scare paranoia threatens everyone, Chinese Americans like our main character included. And we follow these two girls as they risk everything in order for their love to take shape. This book just stole and took over my entire heart. The story is very focused on our main character Lily and her relationships, her sexuality, her career path, etc. Like Danny, I found Lily to be a character who was very easy to root for. She's just the type of character that you want good things for and that you want to be happy, which is definitely not something that is always possible for her because this book is set in the 1950s and there's a lot of ugliness that surrounds her. Not only does this dive into sexuality in the 1950s, but it also does dive into the many different struggles that Chinese Americans faced, from the Red Scare to racism. And even though this book does take place in the 1950s, there are definitely things that happen in here that are currently happening today, or at least similar to things that are happening today. And then this book also does have a really amazing author's note in the back that does dive more into this time period. And I do, of course, want to hype the romance, because how could I not? These two just have such beautiful moments together throughout the story. So much heart and love put into this book and into these characters, and I think that's something that you can really feel while you're reading it. And I also really love the writing style. I definitely need to read more books by this author. This is one of my favorite books that I've read so far this year. It may be number 1 unless I'm forgetting something, and then it also depends on how my current read is going to end, but it's definitely high up on the list nonetheless. Next up is Shout by Laurie Halse Anderson. This is a poetry memoir that was released 20 years after this author's groundbreaking novel Speak. It's written in free verse and depicts deeply personal stories from this author's life, from her childhood, as she is enraged by how little has changed in our culture surrounding essay since Speak was published. And speaking of beautiful writing, this book definitely has it. It's the kind of writing that makes me want to write more and just makes me fall in love with writing and reading all over again. It's a book that's filled with dark and difficult and also powerful imagery and stories. This was my first book by this author, and the stories contained in here just felt so important. And this book also talks about how these stories and this author's voice have been censored over the years, which was incredibly frustrating to read, and also elevates the importance of this book even more. I actually did read this book during Women's History Month last year. I think this might be the only book in this video that I actually did that with, and overall I am just so glad that I did. Next up is The Rise of Kyoshi and also The Shadow of Kyoshi by F.C. Yee. This takes place in the Avatar: The Last Airbender universe and follows the story of Avatar Kyoshi and her journey of how she became the person that she is known as throughout the series. I love the Avatar: The Last Airbender universe so much, and these books allowed me to dive back into that universe and also learn more about it. So I already love it because of that, but it also does feature a handful of really cool and badass women, including our main character herself. Kyoshi is a character who I was really excited to read about when I started this series, and this series definitely delivered on that. I will say I was in a terrible reading slump when I read book 1, and I do think that I would have enjoyed this book a little bit more had that not have been the case. But I read book 2 last year and I didn't have a problem at all. I also think this series has a really fun and interesting cast of characters all around. It did feel very reminiscent of Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra in that way. This universe has a lot of really cool stuff going on right now and in development, and I am just so excited for all of it. Next is This Poison Heart and then also This Wicked Fate by Kalynn Bayron. This Poison Heart follows our main character who has a hidden power over plants. When she inherits a house from her birth mother, she also gains a place to test out her powers. But as she begins to bring the garden back to life, she uncovers that she has also inherited a dark secret, and her ancestors are not going to let her be until she accepts that she is the keeper of the dark power of the poison garden. So I was not a huge fan of This Wicked Fate, but it does contain characters that I really loved and that I think fit the theme of this video very well. But even though I was disappointed by a majority of the sequel, This Poison Heart was a 5-star read for me. I loved the atmosphere, I loved the mystery, and I just loved the way the entire thing was formatted and paced. I also really love the characters, especially the family relationships that are in here, because those were so cute and fun. This is another series that just has really amazing and interesting women that I loved getting to know and to learn about. And it dives into their history as well, which was one of my favorite parts of the story, along with the plant magic. And it just had a lot of really cool concepts and plot points, which was not surprising from this author, but it is, in fact, my favorite from this author. And finally, I do have 3 more books that I want to give quick shout outs to. First up is The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy by Mackenzi Lee. This is a sequel to The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, and it follows a character from that book. It kind of stands alone by itself, but it also is a part of a series, and it kind of doesn't stand alone by itself. Like, I haven't read this book without having read the first book, so I don't know what that experience would be like. But this book does have a lot of really cool women, and it also has an author's note in the back that talks about the real life women that these characters were inspired by. I also coincidentally happened to be reading this book during the time of the abortion bannings, and it was nice to have a book that kind of matched my energy in some way. So for that, I am forever grateful. Next up is The Deep by River Solomon. This is a novella that follows the water-dwelling descendants of African slave women. This is one that just probably needs a reread on my part before I dive fully into talking about it again. But I do remember enjoying it when I read it, so it's here. And same thing for The Good Luck Girls by Charlotte Nicole Davis. This is a western, and I don't read a lot of those, but I really enjoyed this one. It has a cast of women that I really enjoyed, but once again, I do feel like I need to give it a reread, especially since I really want to read the sequel. Okay, so those are all of the books that I have for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and answer the question that'll be around here if you want to do that. And hopefully I will see you here next time. Bye!